Welcome to this video about the Care Act duties in relation to the provision of information and advice. Please note that we have other videos about this topic on the Sky website alongside other resources and an handout with key messages and reflective questions to support embedding your learning. My name is Paula and with me today is Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Paula.
So the duty in relation to information and advice is that the local authority must provide and establish a system for providing information and advice in relation to the care and support for adults and support for carers. What does this mean to you, Kevin?
Thanks, Paula. Well, for me, it means is that you need the services. You need the services in place. We did a market position statement, as they call it, was to check in to see what carers and service users needed, and to make sure that those are in place. So I think that's what it means to me first and foremost, and it also means that it is for everybody. Yeah, it's for people who are eligible for support, but it's also for the general public as well. And it seems like it's quite often forgotten that those people that do have financial security, do have access to resources like this, we're still responsible for making sure that they have the information and advice they need to make good decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic, Kevin. Thank you. You're right in that this is a general duty. So it's not a duty that is just applicable to an individual who has an appearance of need or assessed needs for care and support, or support if you are an unpaid carer. It's a responsibility to make information and advice available to anybody within the local authority area. You did mention, Kevin, that it's important around being available so that individuals have choice and control. Do you think there's any other reasons why it's important that we have a good provision of information and then that resource available so that people can get advice?
I don't believe in sort of independence as such, but we're all interdependent. But there is definitely a need that people are able to make and choose and find things that they want to do for themselves without being told what to do in that. And so it's and of course it means that advice has to be accessible for whatever needs they be, whether it be on the internet or at the end of a telephone line, or some written material, and of course written material in the language or the style that they want to receive that within. And of course sometimes they really just need a person, somebody to talk to that they can actually meet, and somebody may come and visit them if that's what they require. So I think that's what it means to me, is that it is accessible to all and in a format that works for them. And also one of the big problems, certainly as a carer in crisis, it was information overload. We would get a pile of leaflets, a pile of ideas and a pile of things. And well, I threw it 9 years after my mum died. Dad and I threw out a box full of these things, literally a box full of these things, which we'd never even opened.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we need to be making, as a social care practitioner, we need to be making sure that information that we provide to individuals that we support is relevant and it's appropriate and proportionate to your situation. Is that right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And proportionate also means timely, doesn't it? When you actually need it, and when you're in a place to do something with it. Yeah, as well. That's really important.
Absolutely, and it's very important for any social care practitioner to check in with the individual that is being provided that information to see whether they need anything further. So it's not good enough to just give the information and then walk away. We need to be able to check that the individual can act on that information, or if some further support is required. Did you find that happened in your experience, Kevin?
No.
Okay.
No, basically it was only because we kept engaged. We would go to carer support groups, or we would do other things that we get the latest update version of that literature in that way. So it's also that the people that are actually providing the information mustn't assume what that person needs or doesn't need. It is about, 99% of it is about listening to find out where that person is, what their motivation might be to actually go away and actually do something with that information as well. And people don't always tell the lie, tell the truth rather. That you ask them what do they need or what do they want, and they'll tell you something. And it's only when you've actually built that trust with them will they really tell you what they need. So maybe the second, third time, maybe even more before they will actually really share what it is they're really worried about, especially when it comes to, their own circumstances or the circumstances of the person they care for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important thing for myself as a social care practitioner to remember, that because somebody that I'm working with might not be open to that conversation at the point that I start it, that doesn't mean that they won't in the future. And so we do need to keep putting in that effort and that trying to establish the relationship so that we can understand what's important to the person, and we can ensure that we're providing acceptable levels of information, advice and guidance moving forward.
So
Fantastic.
if I could share an example,
Please.
when my mother died, I knew that our local carers charity provided bereavement services, and I asked him whether he was interested, whether my dad was interested in him. He said no, not really. I said, well, shall I just contact them and get them to give you a call? Which they did, and he spoke to them, and he had an enjoyable conversation. And they left, and at the end of that, he said, "Well, no, I don't." He said, "I don't really want it. I don't need anything." And the person said, "Well, can we call you back in?" I think it was 3 months. And he called him back in 3 months, and Dad shared something with the person. I think it was a man. Shared with the person something he hadn't said to any of us during those 3 months. So it is timing is everything. Timing is everything.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So information and advice is also fundamental, not only for the local authority as the organisation under the umbrella of adult social care to providing information to the population. Information and advice is also fundamental when social care practitioners are working with individuals in some of the more specific duties that they may have. So, for example, that might be an assessment of need for care and support, or support for an unpaid carer. It might be a safeguarding inquiry. So to ensure that social care practice is aligned to the key principles of the Care Act, such as choice and control, strengths-based approach, and of course the duty to promote individual well-being, the provision of information and advice is fundamental so that the person is aware of the options and opportunities available to them, so that they can consider, with support from a social care practitioner or somebody that they would choose for themselves, a family member, a friend, for example, to look at the pros and cons and to be able to think about the shape that their journey would like to, what they would like their journey to take moving forward. And the provision of information and advice also provides and promotes the opportunity to ensure that us as social care practitioners are doing everything that we can to enable that individual that we're working with to lead the process, to lead the decision-making process as much as possible.
So on that basis, some of us who have been around a little while in that respect, the law changes. The Care Act has come in, and things like that, who can and who can't claim carer's allowance or get a personal budget and things like that have changed in my lifetime in that way. And there is definitely a need also to check that people are aware of the latest legislation, because when I cared for my mum I wasn't allowed to, so now I'm sure I can't now when I'm caring for my spouse, a partner in that way. So it's very important to check in to make sure that people are aware of what's the up to date and the options, as you said, as what the options are. And of course, one of the big options for people is that they don't have to carry on caring, and they can increase or they can reduce the amount of caring they want to do in that way. So things are changing quite rapidly for the good, I believe. But people are not always aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that information needs to be available in an accessible format, like you mentioned earlier. It's not acceptable for that information to just be on a website, because we will have people within our communities with different communication styles and preferences. So it's really important that that fact-based, that objective information is available in terms of what a person's options are as an individual living with needs for care and support, or an unpaid carer. What does it mean to have an assessment of need? What if I'm determined to have eligible needs? What does that mean? What choice and control do I have in terms of what any future care and support plan or support plan for an unpaid carer might look like? So just going to the point that you made there, Kevin, about carers benefits and entitlement to access that. Now, that isn't something that the local authority has a responsibility to do. That is in relation to Department of Work and Pensions. But as part of a conversation with you, a social care practitioner would have a conversation, for example, to say, you're providing more than 35 hours of support at the moment. Are you aware that that might open up a benefit that you can claim, so things can perhaps feel a little bit more financially stable moving forward? So it's not a duty of the local authority, but it is a duty of the local authority to provide information which will then further have regards to kind of improving and maintaining a person's sense of well-being.
So on that basis of, as you say, um, my mother was sleeping downstairs. We got a discount on our council tax because we basically lost the downstairs ended up being a bedroom basically, and a lounge and everything else. So that was some of these sort of things like you're talking about, which are we do need to be aware of and where to go for those things and actually get access to. We also wanted a facilities grant to be applied for as that as well, which was an interesting challenge, and a lot of these processes can take a long time as well, and often you can find that you're not eligible, which is a real shame in many ways, but mainly it's a shame in that that time has been lost. That time has been lost. So I think there is a need to be realistic about how long something will take, and also not so much deciding whether you will or you won't, but if you won't, what would you do about it in that way, and what can you do now? Because there are often lots of things we can do now. So it's again proportionate and timely. Timely is something I really want to emphasise here, because I have known people wait a long time, and there hasn't been anything available. Things like my mother became immobile over the age of 60, which means that she wasn't eligible for any sort of mobility grant, whatever the right word is. And we never managed to get a mobility vehicle for her because it was so difficult to arrange one, to sort one out. So there's help needed in those circumstances, I suppose.
Okay, so thinking about that then, what would have helped you and your mum at that point in terms of information and advice, so that it wouldn't have felt so traumatic?
So really and truly, when she lost her mobility, and we won't go into why that was, but when she lost her mobility, for my dad and I, that's the end of holidays, that's the end of going out, that's the end of everything, basically. She's now, because we hadn't had any experience, we'd had people that had shuffled around a bit, but nobody that actually had required a wheelchair. And so I think when these sorts of progressions happen, people need to discuss it. People need to have that information, that advice. Another friend, his mother had a stroke. She lost her eyesight. She went home without any information as how to, make life accessible. Really, she was literally, from what I understand it, taken home and to get on with whatever she needed to do when she got home. So I think this is a place that where information and advice is needed. When your circumstances change so drastically like that, can you support that person with all the information they need and more, as we've said about that it's not just about a leaflet, whatever it is to do that. So I think it's that recognising that people do not have this knowledge or understanding when these horrific things happen in their lives.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's important to note as well that while the responsibility or the duty lies with the local authority, it's not expected that the local authority provides all of that, but we need to be having those relationships with other partners and providers of support so that we're sharing that information and making it accessible. So we can signpost, for example, to wheelchair services or whatever it is that's needed, so that relationship, that integration, cooperation and partnership between all of the services is absolutely crucial as well, to enable us to make sure that we've got a good information and advice service to people that require it.
And as you said earlier, signposting is not enough. It's making sure that the people have actually engaged, received whatever it was that you recommended or offered or shown, and they decided they were going to do. So,
yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Remember to check further resources and other videos on this and other themes at Sky website. Thank you.
Thank you.